record. I'm going to share my screen and find the PowerPoint that I want to share. There it is. And we'll get started. How's it going? All right, welcome to our workshop number 3, character. So we're creating characters tonight in our yarning series. So what's so great about story? Let's just review that the most engaging communications involve story, that if you want people to really listen to what you've got to say, you're going to have to yarn to them. If you're just giving them dry stuff, facts and figures and that stuff, then they will have trouble really engaging with what it is you have to say, unless those facts and figures actually speak to them on a story level. If you want them to engage, then you need to start telling stories. We are wired for story. It's actually part of our brain structure to understand, know, crave, tap into story. And we're actually more likely to remember detail that is presented to us in story form. And stories are amazing because they have this ability to build connections, grow empathy, compassion, and trust. The way that they work with our brain, a well-told story has the same impact on a listener as having the actual experience. So, you know, their brains have been observed during storytelling to find that the brain patterns are exactly the same for a listener to a good story as they are for someone who's having that experience. So that is the ultimate in empathy, right? So if you, if you're wanting people to feel that level of empathy for an experience that is not their own, story is the way to go. And there are all kinds of chemicals that are released. If you want people to support a cause, there are chemicals released in the brain when people listen to story that actually make them willing to be supportive of causes. So they're just such a powerful thing in our society. So the purpose of these workshops, of course, is to learn about story, to prepare you for telling stories, and to practice. Oh, that is a new word. To practice for telling engaging and influential stories. And we will get more into the whole influential thing as time goes on. And the whole purpose of all of my speakers workshops is that you develop your skills, knowledge, and confidence so you can speak up, speak well, and be heard. This is me. You get to see me every single time. You get tired of the slide. Angela Tomlinson, speaker, author, coach, educator, allowing you to transform your life through opportunity, education, and reflection. And here are those 3 keys, just to remind you, the keys that unlock you as a confident and masterful public speaker. The idea that knowledge is filling you up from the top, like from the brain down, to learn the how of public speaking in a theoretical kind of way. Wow, my mouth is not working too well tonight. And then the skills is about the bottom up, really developing the capacity to be able to do this thing. So you've got the know-how and the doing how, and then it kind of meets in the middle where we grow your confidence, this heart space to be able to feel like you really can. And those 3 things work together in the workshops that I provide to create confident and masterful public speakers, to unlock your own capacity for that. We've got an icebreaker. So character is our topic tonight, and we're going to jump straight into it. My question is, have you ever come across a remarkable character, a person who has really impressed you in some way, whether that be positive or negative? And I'm going to want you to tell us about them. And let's look at having a little bit of structure to this speech, albeit brief. So remember that all speeches should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I actually don't think we're recording, so I'm just going to make sure that we are. So just forgive me for a second while I just work that out, because I'd hate for everybody who can't be here to miss out tonight.
It says recording on my screen.
Oh, beautiful. That's good. Then I don't have to worry at all. Thank you for that. Okay, so a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so here's some ideas for what you might put in that beginning and middle and an end. So in the beginning, you might sort of give this introduction to how you've encountered this person, the who, what, where, when, why, how, of having come across them, how they've entered your life, or when, where you came across them. In the middle, it's kind of the detail of the character. You can have 5 elements to that. And in the end, feelings or reflections about that character. And it's really quite short and concise. We only really want about 90 seconds. Let's see what's next. All right, so that's me saying congratulations, you did it. So for example, you might talk about someone who you met in a moment. You might talk about someone who has been a mentor to you. You might talk about someone who you really love, someone who's passed, anyone who to you could actually talk about, and their character to you is something of note. And let me give an example. My grandmother is probably the person I would choose to talk about, and I need to show you something, a bit of show and tell. I have this beautiful painting. This is my grandmother, my Nana. This painting was done for me by my second cousin, my first cousin's son, at the age of 17 for my 50th birthday. And my grandmother is very special to me. And there are 2 other cousins who are very special to me. The mother of the boy who painted that for me, and my other cousin Barbs. And we feel quite connected to our grandmother, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the family do as well. But this is a woman who she just had so much love inside of her. The capacity to love for her just seemed to be unending, and every single grandchild just felt so special in her presence, and I'm sure her children felt the same way. So the real strength of character for her was this capacity to love and make us feel loved. And I think that has set me up in life for feeling lovable. And that's one of the hardest things as a human being, to really genuinely feel, because, you know, we get hurt left, right and centre by the people who love us. But to have someone who has just poured love into you unendingly and unconditionally is such a fantastic foundation for life. And I got that from my grandmother. So I would like to hand over to you guys to perhaps give us a little bit of an insight into a character who is remarkable to you in whatever way. Who would like to go first?
I will.
Excellent. Thanks, Amanda.
I met an amazing business coach online, and her name is Holly McHugh, and we met through another program that I'm in with another amazing woman called Denise Duffield Thomas, in a money bootcamp program. And everywhere I looked, Holly was just talking to me, like almost directly at me. And I wasn't seeking another business coach. I was already in a program at the time. And what drew me to Holly was the fact that it felt like she was talking directly to me, and her languaging and everything that she used were the exact problems that I'd been having for probably almost half a decade. And I loved her sense of humour. I loved the fact that there was no cookie cutter method. It was all based on using your intuition and following what works for you, no particular method. She's an introvert, I'm not, but I do have a tendency to be as well. So I could relate to that part of needing to have stillness and quiet. She has young kids, so I could relate to having had young kids as well, and running business part-time has always been my desire too. And she's from the UK and living in Australia, and I've spent a lot, my ex-husband was English, and so I knew about that. And she just is the one that has taken the jar off the lid for me. You know, when you pass around a jar and no one can get the lid off, and then somebody eventually gets the lid off. everyone tries, and so she just popped out a beautiful way of getting my message across and has helped me so much that I'm into my second year of working with her, and it's been amazing. She's amazing.
Thank you, Amanda. I was having trouble finding my cursor then to unmute myself. Amy or Nat, who would like to go next with sharing with us your person of interest, influence, remarkability?
Yeah, I'm happy to go.
Thank you, Amy.
In fact, I kind of had a different person in mind, but then when Amanda talked about Holly, it just then another lady popped into my head that just seemed to be much more impactful than the person I was going to talk about. But similarly, her name is Grace Minton, and she does she's a master coach, so she actually teaches coaching skills and teaches the ICF coaching accreditation. So that's where I first met her, and I've studied a lot and done lots of different courses and things like that, and coaching seems to be a bit of a buzz thing, so my expectations were quite low. But then when I started the training and started sort of getting to know this woman who just really just blew me away with how she is as a person. She's just non-judgmental, so straight up, does not judge. She really applies the lessons that she teaches in coaching, be curious, all these sort of things. She actively applies them when she's teaching you how to actually coach people. And so for her, that was such a big thing for me that made such a difference. And to be able to sit in a space where you're sort of getting critiqued on your coaching skills, but again, not be judged and still be able to have a conversation around where to improve, that sort of lovely constructive criticism has just been something I've not encountered before. And she's now, I've engaged her as my own coach, also finishing off the coaching part, but that's pretty much done now. So I've thought I need more of her in my life to, in some ways it ends up a little bit of just a conversation around different things, but then I've also been able to experience how great coaching is. So anyway, yeah, Grace Minton is fantastic.
Thanks, Amy, for sharing with us about Grace. And that brings us to Nat, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us about somebody who has been remarkable or impactful or interesting to you.
I've just had like a real blank. When I think of, I've met so many different people, but I don't know, I've just found it hard to kind of like think of someone. I think for me, like, it's not so much about someone I've met, but when I read or hear stories of homeless people, and I think of, I'm just like, I'm interested in hearing people's stories, and I think about they've got such character. They've come from all walks of life, and they show a lot of resilience and determination and things like that. So it's a bit hard for me to kind of I don't know, think about anyone in particular, but does that kind of make sense?
It does. It absolutely does. Now, for the purpose of this workshop, though, Nat, we are characterising. So maybe for the work that we're doing tonight, you could actually construct a character fictionally who fits that profile. So if you haven't got someone particularly, then just generate a character for us, create that character for us in the context of what you're actually talking about, if that works for you. But you've got a little bit of time to sort of nut through what you might share with us as we learn the skills of characterising, if that's okay with you. But just speaking out loud is good.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking about my mum, and I was thinking, she's a woman she's got character. Like I think she's a very strong woman. She doesn't like to kind of admit it. I think, she was born in the late 40s. She shows a lot of resilience. She's been through a lot of things in her life. She's had a heart attack. She's had open heart surgery. She, in some ways, we're polar opposites. I'm all for nature and she's all for concrete buildings. But I admire her for her strength and her resilience, especially as I've gone through hard things in my life. I kind of draw inspiration and strength from my mum. Yeah.
Wonderful. Then she might be very useful to you in the context of this as well as in the context of your life. Wonderful. Thank you, Nat. All right, and now we get to celebrate ourselves for having dived straight in and done our first speech, practicing the skill of public speaking. So well done, my friends. So let's just do a bit of a recap on what we've learnt about storytelling so far. In the first workshop, we learned that a story can be told about anything, that it's all just about having detail to expand upon whatever it is that you're sharing. A story has a conflict and a resolution, and the detail that you actually share within the story needs to be relevant to your conflict and resolution. And then we learned about language, that language can be precise, and I'm still making up words, to practice and learn about language being precise, we created word clines and talked about how we can find nuances between words that label something. And did we do cold or did we do hot? I think we did cold. And we put them in a sequence from coldest to warmest of cold to realise that there are nuances of ways of actually even stating the word cold. And when we actually choose a specific word, we can be concise because within one word, we've got a whole lot of meaning. Language can be emotive. So a person can reveal their viewpoint on something, their emotional stance on something by simply choosing the word that they use, the noun, rather than description, but description does come into it. For example, if I was to call a house a home, then that connotes a whole lot of things that feel warm to a person. But if I was to call a house a hovel, it would connote a whole bunch of things that would be the converse of that. And then language can be immersive. And by saying that, I talked about the use of poetic devices such as similes and metaphors. And we did some good practice around the use of similes and metaphors in our workshop. And when we use similes and metaphors, we're actually transplanting an experience on top of the one that we're talking about, so that we're drawing this link between an experience and another to really situate a person within that experience. And this week, we're talking about character and the fact that character is actually show and tell. We need to put emphasis into show as great storytellers, not just tell, and we'll get into that. And this will be interesting for you. This is where storytelling can be quite political. Characters can be sympathetic or antipathetic, and I'll explain that later. So character is show and tell. So our activity right now, you're going to jot some notes down, and I want up to 5 phrases that describe your remarkable character, or 5 traits that really encapsulate them. Like for my Nana, that she has this immense capacity to love, that she's exceptionally nurturing. So maybe 3 to 5 phrases. I'll put the timer on for maybe 90 seconds. You may not need more than that, and then I'll check in. Any questions? Not good.
I have a question now.
Yes.
Is a phrase a sentence, or is a phrase 2 words, or what's a phrase?
A phrase is more than one word, and anything up to, I guess, a sentence, but you can have multiple phrases in one sentence. So it's really a part of a sentence technically, but a phrase can also be a sentence.
Okay.
But it's more than one word. You can have words or phrases.
Okay.
So these should be brief, only 3 to 5 phrases, and we're going to build from there. So I'll give people another few seconds. Looks like everyone's quite heads down into this. All right. You need to put a full stop. we'll keep working. All right, let's see what comes next. So let me describe my quintessential grandmother. She exudes love, makes us all feel like we're her favourite. She forgives readily and she's nurturing. It's as simple as that. So then that's a way of telling what a character is like. We simply use words to say this is what they're like. But we need ways of actually showing character. So great storytellers are able to do this thing where they don't just tell us what a person is like, they show us. And the techniques of characterizing someone involve this acronym SAOs: speech, actions, appearance, other characters, opinions, and symbols. So speech is the kind of things they say, phrases they're known for, as well as how they speak, their tone, the cadence, whatever it is that is remarkable and obviously relevant to that particular aspect of their character. Actions are the things they do. Appearance, how they look, facial expressions, clothing, that sort of thing. Other characters' opinions are what others might say about them. And when I say characters, these are fictional or factual. It depends on whether you're actually narrating a fictional story or telling something from life. And then symbols. Symbols can be things like objects associated with a character, like a necklace or, a painting. It can be a particular style of clothing is symbolic. Settings can be symbolic. They're objects or settings that actually provide meaning beyond their actual literal. Do you need more explanation of that? No? Let me know if you do. So showing character. So let's just quickly whip up a note sheet. Everybody's obviously got some paper in front of them. And on this note sheet, you're going to have those SAO, speech, actions, appearance, other characters, opinions, and symbols. And you're going to have a column for traits. Give yourself plenty of room for making your little notes. So the traits that you've identified go in that vertical column and will be a little bit more detailed in the other bits very shortly. So quickly whip up that table and then we'll move forward. I'll show you what I've done to exemplify this. All right, that should be enough time to have whipped up the table. Let's have a look at what I've got. So with my grandmother, I've just put single words down for the traits, loving, forgiving, and nurturing. And then in spaces that are relevant in that note sheet, I've put details. So in loving, in her speech, her key phrase was, she'd say, I love you more. So you'd say, I love you, Oma, and she'd say, I love you more. I got another show and tell. So my cousins and I, the ones that I spoke to you about who are special to me, have decided we're getting a tattoo that says, I love you more. And I'm the second of 3 to get it. So I got mine done here. Can you see it? I love you more. That's Nana's phrase. That's my latest bit of ink. I'm getting a little bit too inky these days. I need to stop. And then to illustrate that she would behave in ways that are loving, her actions, she'd hold us so tight and so close and so often, you know, like she'd just squash you into her squishy body and plaster us with kisses. One thing she did do that I've, you know, in retrospect is a bit icky for me because we don't culturally do that anymore, is the kiss on the lips. But having come from a European background, that was just simply what we did. Her appearance, that showing that love, she has had this face that would just crinkle up as she had this beautiful look of love for us, and the lighting up of her eyes. My cousin has managed to really capture that in the painting, the beautiful light of love that sits in her eyes because of that love that's in her heart. Forgiving, I guess in that one, there's only really that action, and that is that she would just accept and welcome everyone into her house. I mean, we're a passionate European family and we're always bitching at each other, bitching about each other, hating each other and loving each other. And she'd just bring us all together anyway, you know, like there was no concern about factions or anything like that. It's just we're all there and we're all just loving each other even though we're being bitchy. And then nurturing. One of the ways that she nurtured was through food. That's why most of the family is actually morbidly obese. She cooked a lot and cooked really, really well, and has shared that skill and that passion for food with most of us. You know, and then in appearance, I guess the bosom is also quite symbolic of being loved, but she had a really great big set of knockers. Her breasts were the largest in the family, and then my mum's were, but then she shrunk now my daughters are. So my daughter's going to have to be the nurturing one. She's inherited that Croatian chest, the nurturing chest. Other characters' opinions. My mum often talks about how nurturing my nana was, that everything that she did was just focused on caring for other people, that seemed to be her life's mission. I had a memory just last night of the fact that she truly loved my granddad, who would have been a really freaking hard person to live with. He was a typical passionate, strong, masculine, patriarchal Croatian man who had been through a war and had post-traumatic stress. So you combine all of those things, and there was a level of violence to him as well. He would have been a really hard person, I know, for me to live with. I've probably got more of him in me than I have of my nana. That wouldn't have helped. And yet she found a way to just love him anyway and love all of her children and just keep everything together. Even to the point where it just broke her heart that he died so young. He was in his early 50s, probably my age now, when he died of a massive heart attack, and never got to enjoy the fruits of all of the hard work that he put into creating a wealth base that she could enjoy as an older person. That broke her heart. And then symbolically, her predominant setting was the kitchen and the dining area. I don't remember ever seeing her sitting anywhere else in the house. She was either in the kitchen or she was sitting at the dining table. This maybe, I don't know, 20, 10, 15, I don't know how big size is, this small space that I only ever saw her in the house. I can't picture her in my mind in any other space. And that was all about that caring for people and having the things on hand to show care and looking after people. So this is how we can use these techniques of characterizing to show what a character is like, instead of just saying what they're like, to build the character from all of these little Lego pieces that demonstrate what they're actually like. So it's time now for you to spend a little bit of time planning your character, what they say, what they do, how they look, what others might say about them, and anything symbolic that reflects those character traits of your character. So this is probably at least 5 minutes, and I'll check in. Just put that on the timer and make sure you tap in with any questions.
How many did you say?
I've got 5 minutes. Oh, traits, minutes.
Traits.
I've put 3. Don't do any more than 5. When you start getting detailed, the amount of traits need to reduce. Less is more. That's been 5 minutes. Do we need a bit more time? It looks like maybe a minute. Yeah, 1 more minute. All right, it's your time. So what I'm wanting you to do now is to just choose one or two of those traits. Now, this isn't necessarily a speech. This is just an opportunity to share some of the ideas that you've come up with from your chart. And I want you to show one or two of those traits and how you have in that table come up with some ideas of how that character trait could be shown instead of told through those techniques of characterisation. So who would like to go first? I need to dob someone in. It looks like Amy this time. Yay, come on down.
I just couldn't. I had the same thing. My cursor was on the wrong screen. Okay, so be two traits that I've come up with for Grace. So she's very patient. So in that, her speech, she really, I guess, it's almost, that's an action almost, like she doesn't talk. Well, she doesn't say, but she listens and doesn't jump in. So she actually holds herself in this state of readiness, waiting for you to talk. Also, that's a bit of an action, I think, because there's lots of, she's actively engaged in it, but then holding her own opinion back, waiting for you to talk. So appearance, she looks watchful and she looks like she's attentive and listening. And wise as a trait. So she, her speech, so she actually shares her stories and her own experiences, and even some of her own flaws, which made it very real, some of the traps you can fall into as a coach. Action, so we've got a WhatsApp group, and she almost treats us like we're the only coaching group she's ever had. And she's a master coach, who's been coaching for 20 years. Like, we feel really special. Opinions, she's just got such a great reputation in the industry because of her very, very humble, and there's no ego there at all. So that's that reputation. And this is the only one I could come up with symbols for. Just in that wisdom, she just shared all the resources that she had. Some, we got to touch and feel and play with some of the books that she had, and the play, actual for kind of play therapy coaching kind of thing. And she just shared all of that with us, which was really good.
Very good. Thanks, Amy. Nat, would you like to go next? Share some of your ideas there.
I'll mute myself. I'm just thinking about my mum, and that she's very loving, but she's very humble. So, like, to show it, she, I can see it in her eyes. I can see the love in her eyes, and especially when she, if I were to leave like her house and she'd say, like, love you, Nat, and she wouldn't even have to say that. It would be like in the hug. It would be the kind of that warm embrace, and kind of seeing it in her eyes. That's like, I think, one of mum's traits. And just, she doesn't like being made a fuss of. So she has a big heart. She's always done the cooking, for the family. And even when she had her open heart surgery and that, she, for her, she just kind of knew that she had to get through it. And I wanted to make a fuss of her because she had done so much for me, my brother and my dad, but she doesn't like to be made a fuss of. Well, maybe it's being the centre of attention. She'll just kind of like, like get on with it kind of thing. So I think it's definitely in the body language as well, showing it.
Very good. Thank you, Nat. And Amanda, share a couple of your ideas.
Holly is intuitive, and so she would say things like, I like the feeling of that for you. Whenever you've come up with an idea, or you might put a few things out and she'll pick one and say, I like the feeling of this. She uses her intuition through the social media posts. So I might feel like she's talking directly to me when she can tap into her clients and what their struggles are. And then she'll put a post on social media. So I had a really, like, for example, yesterday I had a really challenging day, and the post this morning was just reflecting exactly that and how was I going to show up. So it's like she does it through the language she uses and the way she communicates on social media. And in appearance, I've just put she uses meaningful pictures that tap into that description of intuition, but that was a little bit hard to come up with. And other characters' opinions are some of her testimonials. Just, I love how Holly connects to my soul, or some of those comments from other people in her testimonials. And I wasn't really sure about the symbols either. So I'm not really sure about that. And she's funny. So she uses sarcasm with her speech in a way that I can relate to. So she might just make a joke saying, you've never said that before, when I've said, I'm ready to launch my group program, or I never can remember what I need to say in a content piece. Or she'll be like, you've never said that before. And she'll send me funny links to things. And she uses her actions, she uses GIFs everywhere in her teaching and in her social media posts and things as well. And I find they're always ones I can totally relate to. And not a lot makes me laugh out loud, but she makes me laugh out loud. And in her appearance, she laughs a lot. So finds other things funny, as well as laughing at her own jokes as well. And other people comment about that too, and not sure about the symbols. That was a bit tricky.
So it's actually really arbitrary to put things into those categories, but what it does is actually helps us to think about ways of describing someone, showing rather than telling. When you talk about the pictures that she shows, they're probably more symbols than they are, that, and even the gifts, that, and not the act of showing them, that is definitely actions, but that they're actually there as a resource surrounding her, sits as a symbol. Sometimes appearance is as much as a facial expression. Facial expression can fit in actions as well. So, it's, as I said, it's quite arbitrary, but what it actually does is gives us many dimensions to draw upon. So
reels, using reels that demonstrate her sense of humour would be funny. I mean, would be a symbol?
Potentially, yes. Yeah. So it's sort of symbolic of her humour, perhaps. Yeah. Funny reels, comedy. Yeah. Excellent. Very good. We're all on the right track. So now what I want you to do is think of a particular event or situation that has occurred that you can actually use to exemplify these character traits. Do you need me to spoil my speech ahead by telling you what I would use to exemplify my grandmother, or are you able to come up with something? I've got a nod for a yes, so on that basis it's a yes. So the one event that I'm going to use to exemplify these things that I'm saying about my grandmother is something that I actually mentioned in my TEDx talk. It was the fact that my grandmother's love for me didn't even end when she died. So on the day she died, I couldn't be there with her. I was in a brand new job and I was in a leadership position. It was my second day on the job. It was a workshop situation I had to deliver. And there was plenty of family in the room, and family that I would rather not be around in that context, because it was never going to be a beautiful, nurturing, wonderful experience being with them to support my Nana to pass. So I made a conscious choice not to be there, which is always in debate with me. But anyway, that's not the story that I'm telling. I was on my way home from work that day, and my Nana had passed not long before. And all of a sudden, my car was filled with her presence. I was just overwhelmed with the sense of her being there. And it was this feeling of her energy, and it was pure, pure love. It was like being wrapped in her arms and held to her bosom, but from an energetic point of view as opposed to a physical point of view. And it was like she actually came to visit me just to let me know that she loves me more. So that's the event that I would tack on to the things that I've used to create her character, that then, thank you, Amy, that exemplifies the fact that this woman had this most immense capacity for nurturing and for love and for forgiveness. So yours may be a little bit more in this world as opposed to otherworldly, but the idea is that the thing that you talk about, the moment in time, the event, whatever it is something that really shows through an event that this person is who you say they are. All right, so I'll leave you. Is 5 minutes okay? I'll give you 5 minutes. They pass so quickly. and I'll check back in. And just like that, another 5 minutes of your life passed. Okay, now let's talk about sympathetic and antipathetic characters. So sympathy is something that we would recognize as a concept, but in terms of characterization, if a character is sympathetic, it's a character that we like and approve of. If a character is antipathetic, it's a character we dislike and disapprove of. When characters are constructed by master storytellers, they're constructed in ways that they are either sympathetic or antipathetic. And usually our main character is the sympathetic character, the main sympathetic character. And when we create a sympathetic character, the listener, the reader, wants to have that person successful in the plot. We want to see their conflict overcome to a satisfactory resolution. And the antipathetic characters are usually those who stand in the way of successful outcomes or create problems for the sympathetic characters, and we don't want them rewarded in the plot. And there's a lot of stuff that's wired into us about our values, and some of these values are universal, but then everything is political anyway. So the sympathetic character should be showing traits and values that are aligned with ours, and antipathetic characters would be showing traits and values and beliefs and actions that are not aligned with what we believe in and what we value. And we can then use that to manipulate our audience to support a certain outcome, a certain point of view when we use the plot to our own aims, which comes up in a later workshop. So that's getting a little bit complicated. But if we just take it back to sympathetic and antipathetic characters, we're creating characters on purpose that we either want our audience to align to or not align to. And I think you'll find that without exception tonight, we've all created sympathetic characters. I'm thinking that maybe it would have been smart for me to have created an antipathetic character just by way of example, but maybe that's something for that later workshop when I talk about how that all comes together. Because when we create characters and we want to talk about characters, we really want to talk about people we admire and love and who have made a positive impact in our lives rather than get buried in horrible stuff. So I expect that people are creating their sympathetic characters tonight, and that's certainly what we've seen so far. And we'll come back to that concept in a later workshop, but that's just laying the groundwork for the fact that we can use character to manipulate our audience. All right, it's time to bring it all together. What we're going to do is retell our description of character from the icebreaker, emphasising that character through use of showing instead of just telling, creating that sympathetic character, obviously, because that's who we've chosen already, and using that storytelling framework. So the storytelling framework, remembering we have a beginning, a middle, and an end to our narrative. And we begin by giving us that who, why, where, when, what of the character, and perhaps just a little bit of an introduction into who they are. That's the telling. So tell us who they are. And then getting into that detail, really exemplifying who they are by showing us, exploring those characteristics of that person through what we've come up with through speech, actions, appearance, other characters' opinions, and symbols. And then to end it, and then we need to actually state that event that really illustrates that character. And we can end our characterization by perhaps doing a reflection on how they've impacted our life or how we feel about them, those kind of things, maybe something specific about that character if you like. So these are just general ideas and a general structure for you that you can choose to adhere to the letter, or you can completely go off script. It's up to you. But what this does for you is give you a cohesive way of bringing all of the learning together and keeping it concise and on point. So it's up to you whether you choose to use this or to do your own thing. I'm not one to stifle creativity. Right, let me just check what my next slide is. All right, so this is where we practice speaking. Everyone gets to speak. We stick to what we're talking about. Try and be that sort of mixture between being descriptive but being concise, is staying on point, not going off on a tangent. And if you stick to the outline that I gave, then you're going to be making sure that you're not drifting off. But if you're using your own guide, then you'll have to work on that as well. And try and keep it to 3 minutes. We do have a little bit of time because there's so few of us, but we're practicing also keeping to a time limit. Haven't really been adhering to that or timing you guys to let you know, but just kind of having a general feeling for the fact that we don't want to be doing 10-minute speeches on our character. So let me go first. Get myself comfy. My grandmother would have to be one of the most amazing people who I have had in my life, very impactful. And she was impactful because of her capacity to love and nurture and forgive. She was the kind of person who would make every grandchild feel like they were her absolute favourite. And of course, I was her favourite. She would wrap us in these hugs that were very fleshy. She was soft and she would just encapsulate us in her arms. And we'd be buried in folds of flesh and this feeling of being held and loved and safe and absolutely adored. And the look in her eyes just lit up with love for us, and her face crinkled with smiles and the rapture of being in the presence of these small people who were her grandchildren. She would show love through food. She was a real nurturer, a real carer, and her kitchen was always on the go, making the most wonderful foods. And my memories of a child of these dishes that were traditional Croatian dishes like sarma and Velikaflica, and we would have these things on special occasions or just because, and she would feed us to show love. And she was always in the kitchen. I have no memory of her being anywhere but either sitting at the dining room table, which was adjacent to the kitchen, or in the kitchen itself, showing her love through food. And she always brought everyone together. It didn't matter what misdemeanors we had perpetrated that our parents had complained about during the week, or how people were getting along amongst each other as passionate Europeans. We were always at odds with each other as well as loving each other crazily. But she would just bring us all together and show that exceptional forgiveness. I wasn't there the day that my beautiful Nana passed away. In some ways, I wish I could have been, but there were lots of things that led to me not being there that day. But I'm pretty sure she forgave me because she visited me after she died. I was driving home from work, and all of a sudden I had this overwhelming sense of her presence. Her loving energy filled my car and wrapped me in what felt like her quintessential Nana loving hug. And I feel like she visited me probably partly to let me know that it was okay, partly to say goodbye, and partly to say, I love you more. I am so grateful for the fact that this woman was part of the grounding of me as a human being, because everybody deserves to feel unconditional love, to have somebody, oh, I'm going to cry, somebody who looks at them like they are the most precious thing on this earth. And that gave me the grounding for self-love that we need so much in our world. And, you know, as we get to this age now where we're just so, we can fall into being so hard on ourselves, to have that history, that knowledge that someone has loved me that much is just so empowering and so powerful for me as a person going through the rest of my life. And I'll be grateful to have had this wonderful grandmother. And now I can wipe my eyes. That took me by surprise. Okay, who's going next? I think it's Nat's turn to go first if you're feeling ready, Nat.
Yeah, sure, I'll give it a crack.
Go.
But probably might not be as emotional as yours.
That's okay. I just caught myself by surprise.
So just thinking about my mum, and a particular example situation that I can think of is at Christmas time. So mum has so much love to give, and she's so loving and appreciative of everything that I do, that at Christmas time she for example, like she'll put all the plates out, so she'll be cooking for everyone. So it's my dad, it's me, it's my brother, it's the 4 grandkids, and she just takes it on as that's her thing. In some ways she's very protective of the kitchen, but in other ways I think that that's her routine and that's what she likes doing. And she'll have like all the plates out, and she'll put labels on the plates of whose dishes they are. So when she serves out the food, she's always checking in with us, like, you know, have you got enough? You know, there's more in the kitchen. So she's just very thoughtful that way. And that just really sprung to my mind, that you know, she gives a lot and she doesn't really expect a lot back. So she's always, you know, telling me that she loves me, and she'll give me a hug, and you know, that makes me feel loved, and knowing that she loves me. And you know, I really look up to her. She's a very strong woman. I think she has so many strengths that she probably doesn't even consider them as strengths, but she has dug deep a lot in her life, and I really admire that in her. So although we're kind of we can be opposites, like she can be, you know, I'm the nature person, but she's all about concrete buildings. We just have this kind of connection, and yeah, and I really love that about my mum.
Lovely. It's so nice to hear us talking about these beautiful women in our lives. So Amanda, would you like to go next?
I wish I was doing my mum now.
Next time.
Or my granny.
You just want to cry too.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to cry. Well, I'm very unlikely to cry. I will just put my timer on because that is helpful to me.
Yep.
Except last time I had the stopwatch on, so I thought I had more time than I did because I was looking at it. So just start the timer. So my business coach and mentor, Holly McHugh, I met online and in a business boot camp, a money boot camp that we were in, and I just kept seeing her pop up everywhere, and I just did one of her free challenges, and it spoke right to my heart and soul. And I then reached out to her and we jumped on a call, and I said, I'm not ready to work with you yet, and next thing I knew, I was investing 5 figures into working with her, and have been for over a year now. And it's been remarkable. I feel like there's definitely a connection with her, and she's everything that I aspire to be and admire in a coach and a person. And I can relate because she has kids and she's married, as I used to be, and she has an affinity with the UK, where my ancestry is from and my ex-husband was from, and we were together for 28 years, so I can relate to that. So our sense of humour works well together. She also has a magical way with words, and I try not to be on social media that much apart from my business, but I love it whenever Holly appears because it's just fun and joyous. And once a fortnight, sometimes once a week, I'm in her inner circle program, and there's a group of 10 of us, and she's always there, always on time. She hardly ever has to reschedule, so she really lives up to my values of showing up when you say you're going to do something as well, being accountable. And she's always bright and bubbly and doesn't sit in the victim role at all, which I love as well. She's got one of her youngest, who's not even 2, is quite an unwell child, and she will still turn up most of the time and get carers for her, or her husband helps out. And I really admire that without, just trying to. Holly's really intuitive and can connect with people in a beautiful way, and I love her sense of humour that she uses and laughs at herself when we have the sessions together. And she's really helped me grow my business and take it to the next level, and encourages me every day to keep believing in myself. And I think that's, I was trying to look at my notes at the same time, but that'll do.
Being that you finished off by saying her impact on your life, it kind of rounded it off quite nicely. So I was clapping already.
Oh, cool.
That was okay. That was great. Thank you for introducing us to Holly. And I feel like I should be connecting with her and doing all those things that like I feel like I should know this person. Like, you've sold her to me.
Awesome.
She'll be loving it. All right, Amy, your turn.
So, Grace, I think she actually lives up to her name quite well. I don't know, every now and then you meet someone that just kind of walks into your life that is a person who's just the right person at the right time for when you need them at that time. And Grace was one of those people that I wasn't looking for, but found me anyway. She just has such a lovely approach about her. She's got an interesting style that is, again, aligns with my values too, of being, I guess, kind of modest, like it's all for the good of the greater good rather than your own individual achievements. That really resonates with me about her. When we do the coaching, we have an opportunity to, I didn't start my thingy. Anyway, I'll try and keep an eye on it. We have an opportunity to practice our coaching on each other, and Grace, as well as the rest of the cohort, watch in and then provide feedback. And Grace, her feedback is always really insightful. It comes from a place of curiosity and compassion, and really is designed to guide us towards being better coaches. And there was one time where one of the fellow students kind of went really off topic, really just off track. And she does every now and then would sort of come back on, because they disappear while you're doing the session and kind of watch in stealth mode. But then she came back in and then just really gently guided him back to the path that he was supposed to be on. And in such a way, there was an amazing thing to watch, because she didn't, there was no criticism. It was from a deep place of understanding, that she knew he had a lot of stuff going on in his life at the time, and he'd sort of projected that onto our practice coachee, and you could see a lot more of it was about him. But the way she approached it was just really patient and gentle and almost loving in a way that just really validated what he was going through, and but also educated us all. So from that, I just remember watching it and thinking, this is a master human person in action, of just being able to create, like, manage all these different dynamics in a way that made everyone feel good, but we all learned a lesson as well. So it was just a really powerful experience.
You might have read my lips. Wow. Yeah, she sounds amazing, and sounds like the quintessential coach and the person that you really want to be learning from. So awesome, and nice characterisation, which is more to the point. All right, team, well done on giving your characterisation speeches. Oh, I seem to have lost the ability. Oh, there we go. We've done this. So we've spoken, and everyone's stuck to the outline and been descriptive, and there's been some timing going on, so well done for doing that. We're really developing those skills, and I'm going to take a moment to give a mention to my friend Amanda, who actually spoke on the speaker's stage on Sunday as one of the people speaking on the soapbox workshop, the soapbox speaking event up in the city at the Moon Restaurant Cafe, and did an absolutely marvellous job. So thank you, Amanda, and well done. And Amy's putting up a little celebration emoji because she's like so Zoom savvy. Been doing this a while, have you, Amy? And good on you for celebrating with us. All right. So we're up to that point in the evening where we look specifically at growing confidence. And what I want to talk about tonight is neuroplasticity. There was once upon a time when we believed that our brains were pretty fixed, that intelligence was fixed. And, if you're born with a disability, your disability is fixed. If you've got an intellectual disability, there's no point teaching you because you're never going to learn. You just need to make sure you're comfortable. We've changed a lot from those times. And I've actually seen evidence of this neuroplasticity amongst people who are actually physically disabled. There was, so let's just define it for a minute. It's the ability of the brain to still keep growing and adapting and changing and working towards things that seem to be unlikely, if you like. So when we have some kind of accident or problem, or there's something that we feel like we can't learn and it's taking us longer, our brain has the capacity to learn this. And I'll come back to that in a minute. The experience that I had in the last little while was when I went to visit a special needs school, because I was looking at their sensory room. I was setting up one in another school. And this teacher had a real passion for sensory experiences for kids with disability. And you know those jolly jumpers, the things that we had for our little kids? Thank you, Natch. Norman Deutsch, The Brain That Changes Itself, obviously a theorist in neuroplasticity. This man had a real passion for people having sensory experiences, and he made this jolly jumper for big kids. So it's this sort of elastic harnessy thing that you can sit in and bounce up and down. And so he would put kids who are quadriplegic in these jolly jumpers. And he had kids who've never had any movement in their body starting to have movement in places like their feet, because they're actually doing things with their body that they've not done before. So simply providing the opportunity for this body to do something that people thought was pointless, the brain is actually now starting to create the neural pathways for movement that did not exist before for this child. that to me was an illustration of everything that was theoretical for me in the stuff around neuroplasticity. We now understand the power of the word yet. That even if we can't do something now, it's just a matter of time if we put the right things in place to be able to do it in the future. Breaking the 4-minute mile, I think it was Herb Elliott who broke the 4-minute mile. Once humans actually understood that that could be done, it's commonplace for people to actually run a mile faster than 4 minutes. If we commit to the things that are required to establish the neural pathways that we need to be able to do something, then we can do it. It's simply a case of putting the work in and accepting that it's a work in progress, it's a time thing, and we haven't got there yet. And this is the same for becoming a masterful public speaker. If you think that I'm too nervous to do this, or that person, I wasn't born with those skills, I don't have that capacity, I'm calling bullshit, because everybody actually has the capacity. We simply need to do the work that's required. We need to learn the theory and develop the skill, put the work into growing our confidence so we can become those masterful public speakers that we actually aspire to be. Neuroplasticity, it's the ability of our brain to be able to grow and change. And it has changed psychology, it has changed medicine, and I think it's changing everyday lives now as it becomes commonplace, understood that this is an actual thing. I'm just going to check the chat because you guys have been going off. All right. Oh, yes, we've got Carol Dweck and Richard Bannister, Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza's about all kinds of stuff. That guy, oh my goodness, he's amazing. His books are so technical. He actually turns all of this quantum physics stuff, he really scientifies it. But then when he actually speaks, he makes it understandable. So it's really worthwhile having a listen to when Joe Dispenza does things on YouTube compared to when you actually read his books, just to get that more lay person view and lots of personal experiences and stories to make sense of the stuff that he talks about. Yeah, he's amazing. Angela Duckworth-Grit. Yes, so I am preaching to the choir here about neuroplasticity, but it doesn't hurt us to remember these things. All right, where are we at? Yes.
I've studied psychology.
Yes, you have. Yeah. All right. We're at what you've learned today. So we're back to, I think Amanda was our person who first started first, and we're back to starting first with Amanda. Amanda, what have we learned today, my friend? What are your takeaways?
My takeaways are that I always want to get someone else to help me write the story and do all this stuff and not me. But,
does that work?
Well, I've only written one speech, but I didn't do it by myself.
That's okay.
And this is really helpful. It's been really helpful to understand how those bits all come together so that I'll be able to use it much better in the everyday stories that I tell. Not necessarily if I'm going to do a signature talk, then I might get help to write it depending on what it is, but for my everyday stories, and there's so many more stories after telling one. Still not sure, haven't had much feedback on that one that I did tell yet, and haven't used it on a big audience to workshop or whatever to see if that story resonated. But there's so many other stories we have that, it's when I was driving home, just far out, there's all these other things that I could tell and share, and based on what other people said. So just then how to use the characters and explain them. And then I guess it helped me understand how the speech coach that helped me write that wrote the story. Yeah.
Fantastic. And then when you become metacognitively aware of how it's put together, it will just fall into place and you won't need that help. It'll just flow. So it's always progress, always. So that's really good. Very heartening. I love it. All right, Nat, your takeaways from today.
I really was interested in the whole character thing, and I can see how when you like break it down, like you say, with the different, speech, actions, appearance. So you really focus on a character, but kind of flesh it out and bring them to life a bit more. So, and I really have found those tips, things that we've gone through, like really useful. So because for me, ultimately, I'd love to run some workshops about autism in women and like share my story. So, but this is good because it's now making me think more about how I can talk about like myself as the character, I guess, and just kind of make it like really interesting. And I really appreciate like all the different things that we've talked about tonight and around the character.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it's all very formulaic, and you can use a formula and then become creative with a formula to produce art. So an artist is someone who knows how something is done, but then does it in a way that's really unique. Lots of us can just imitate other people's things, but a true artist is someone who brings their own self to it and manipulates it in their own way, which is why I quite often would say I'm never about cookie cutter speeches or speakers. I'm all about finding out as much as we can about what people do and finding out their formulas and deriving formulas, but then applying them in your own way, so you are an artist and a master, not just an imitator.
Jack of all trades. Master of none.
Well, so many of us are those things. I think we have such busy lives that we do that, don't we? But I'm really looking forward to your progress over time, because this is so important to you and your pathway forward. Learning how to create, utilize the antipathetic and sympathetic characters to really bring your audience in to care about the plight of the person who is actually neuroatypical, neurodiverse, and engendering that sympathy for that experience. Getting the Me Too thing going on. Lovely. And Amy?
Well, I learned that despite getting up at 3:30 this morning to go catch a plane that I got on and then off and then came home, that despite all of that, this is so ridiculously interesting that I haven't even yawned once. So that's kind of cool to know that the actual, like you saying that, using that sort of narrative style to help engage, you're also doing it with us, and therefore I find myself very engaged, because that's the irony of doing this sort of thing, isn't it? But anyway, aside from that, you flipped it on its head as well. I thought we would be talking kind of mechanics about, I say too much, and your hand gestures in speech, like all that sort of kind of silly stuff. But I see now really if the speech itself and really refining that and really coming from a deeper perspective, then that will resonate probably, with the other stuff being maybe icing on the cake. And I sort of thought speech and public speaking was all about that. So that's what I've learned, but it's not. It's about the story. It's more the story, and then I guess later how you tell it, but story first.
I'm going to be cheeky for a moment and say, if you want your ums counted, go to Toastmasters. I'm still a Toastmaster, but yeah, I do things a bit differently. And actually, the is not necessarily the worst thing, because the gives the listener the opportunity to take in what you've said. So don't approach speaking looking to eradicate the approach speaking looking to speak with passion and interest and capacity to engage, and the ums will potentially take care of themselves. My ums have turned into ands. That's my new clutch word or filler, if you like.
Ahs. I tend to say now, and what I do when I talk is I slow down, because naturally I've got slow processing speed anyway. So I'm thinking about things and then I might pause, and that actually saves me doing the
It's a perfect technique, and people are very able to listen to somebody who speaks slowly and takes the time to pause. That's where we really get the chance to engage in and process what people are saying. So it's really good. Like, we can get excited. My habit has always been to speak really fast because I get so excited. But then people are like, what did she just say? Because I've just said it so quickly. Brilliant. Well, I'm really glad that that everyone's getting value out of this. And Amy, just saying the word yawn, I'm feeling the need to yawn now. I hadn't even thought about tiredness because I do enjoy this so much as well. All right, team, we're just about at the end for tonight. So what's next? We've still got 3 more fortnightly workshops ahead of us for the yarning series, the 16th of August, the 30th of August and the 13th of September. We have a yarning speaking event, which is to be advised. I really enjoyed the venue that Amanda and I spoke at on Sunday. That was in Northbridge. It's a cafe with the space out the back that has some pretty good acoustics. And although it's an outside-inside space, an inside-outside space, it was warm enough. They had great food, and you could have a beverage, and it was really fabulous. So, and they will allow me to use that space for free, but the person who does the sound costs me a fair bit of money, so I have to have a look at the pricing structure for that. And the local brewery in Mandurah are always happy to have me there to do some speaking events. So we've got a couple of opportunities for doing some storytelling later in the year. I have promised people an online speaking event, which has not come to fruition as yet, so bear that in mind. I'm always available for one-to-one coaching. Also, it's in my mind to provide an opportunity for people to come together to practice their speaking. So not a workshop as such, but a forum to speak, give each other feedback, do some impromptu stuff, the things that I really got value out of myself from Toastmasters, impromptu speaking, feedback from the people in the group, and an opportunity to actually keep practicing speaking. So if that's something of interest to you, make sure that you let me know that, and we will look at an online and a face-to-face option for that, which is low cost and frequent and ongoing, so people can tap in and tap out. It's not like it's a 6-week thing that you have to commit to. It's a little bit more loose than that. Righto, so what's next? So we have done using descriptive and poetic language. We've done characterisation. Next workshop is creating atmosphere, and that's done around setting. So it's a real focus on the setting of a story and creating atmosphere. And we have story structures ahead, and then stories of equal for a message. Remembering that if you can't make the workshop, you can request the recording. Normally I'll just pile that on you anyway. Anyone who wants to come to the face-to-face workshop as well is most welcome. You can attend the face-to-face and the online and have the recording all for the same price. I'm happy to have lots of people around. You never have to miss a workshop, and you've got 3 opportunities to engage in this content. And my usual shout out to Slides Mania, because I don't actually have to create these pretty slides that I use because I'm no graphic designer, and it's wonderful to have these things on tap. And as it's free, it's fair to give a shout out. Righty ho, so that's the end of today's workshop. Let me stop sharing my screen and bring you all back. So any final ideas, thoughts, things to say other than good night?
When you say, just curious about the sound person, is that the venue sound person or your one that you use?
The venue supplied the sound person, and because they actually have to isolate the audio in the space, their person has to know their stuff. So they're kind of, I have to use that person. Yeah, so there's no choice around that, unless we chose to have the music piped through and speak over the top of it with our own voices. And I think that the audio was, although it cost a fair bit of money, it was worth it for the sound quality that we got as speakers. It was really good.
Yeah, that was the feedback I had, how good the sound was.
Yeah. So it's not worth compromising on that. It's just worth finding out ways of raising the money. The raffle, my inspiration for a raffle actually helped a little bit, but that it was only a small part of the cost of what was there. So I have to look at a way of recouping some of that money. Even if my speakers paid $10 or $20 each, that would really, really help to cover that cost. And I think that would be worth their while to do that for the opportunity for an audience. But we'll look at that. I'd rather that the event be free for the audience, because that brings people in and allows us a bigger audience.
Yeah. And when you put the moon into Siri, it says, getting directions to the moon. That's the best. I'm going back.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I've really enjoyed tonight. Nice hearing everybody's stories and having the opportunity to pay homage to my beautiful grandmother. And I will see you in a fortnight, if not before. Okay.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for Holly McHugh.